In a city in which two cars can be found per every three people, you might assume that rapid transit in Luxembourg isn't the greatest of hits. And this was very much true until 2017, when the first phase of Lux tram opened to the public. Now, 7 years later, it is pulling an average daily ridership of 120,000 people in a city that only has 130,000 residents. That's 92% of the city's population using the tram on a daily basis. So it begs the question, how do you go from bare bones rapid transit to a resounding success in the span of 7 years? And can Luxembourg's formula be replicated elsewhere? You're watching the Ganchet line, and this is a deep dive into Luxtram. With close to 130,000 people, Luxembourg is a middle-sized city surrounded by hills and rivers. The capital city of a microstate country located in Western Europe, it is bordered by Belgium, Germany, and France. Although modest in size, Luxembourg is now home to Luxtram, the publicly owned company responsible for the design, construction, and operation of Luxembourg's tramway network. With 16 kilometers of tramway, 24 stops, and ambitious plans to expand the network with 3 new tramway lines by 2035, Luxtram initially struggled to get off the ground. See, this isn't actually Luxembourg's first venture into trams. Yet, with the network's long and complicated history, getting to understand how we got here requires a proper dive into the history books. In 1875, the first horse-drawn tramway appeared in Luxembourg. Its purpose? To bring people from the central station to the city center at a time when Luxembourg had torn down its fortifications in order to enable city growth. 3 decades later, in 1908, the tram was electrified and lines were added to connect the outskirts of the city with downtown Luxembourg. But even in those early stages, the tram already had some fatal issues. It shared lanes with other traffic instead of having its own reserved lane. By 1938, the city had 12 lines covering 37 kilometers of tracks. But from then onwards, no further investments were made, and the network started to fall into disrepair. As people started owning cars, the disadvantages of shared traffic lanes became apparent. Crashes became more common, and as buses became part of Luxembourg's public transport, trams were slowly phased out. By 1964, the last tramway disappeared from Luxembourg, and the city would have to wait until 2017 for them to come back. Fast forward to 2006, and the idea of bringing the tram back to Luxembourg was starting to form. It was in that year that the firm proposal to build a second era of tramways in Luxembourg was brought forward to government officials. Later that same year, the Chamber of Deputies validated the project, allowing it to finally gain momentum on the back of multiple failed public transport projects. 1 year later, the route was defined, and Luxtram, whose shares were split between the Luxembourg state and the city, was founded. However, it wasn't quite that easy. Shortly after carrying out preliminary studies, the 2010 financial crisis hit Luxembourg, and construction on the tram was delayed. As these delays were happening, political parties opposing the light rail in favor of a train tunnel also caused problems for the tramway. Though in the end, this anti-tram opposition didn't manage to go very far, it still caused lots of controversy and created many movements against the tram by repeatedly asking for a referendum. Finally, construction on the tram started in September of 2015. And surprisingly, despite the work starting 5 years late, construction on the first 3.5-kilometer phase progressed ahead of schedule. A rare feat when it comes to public construction works. Thus, in December of 2017, multiple months ahead of schedule, Luxtram officially opened to the public. And so, after more than a decade since the proposal was brought up, the Luxtram era had begun. So, where are we at today, you might ask? Well, in the years since the tram opened in 2017, the remaining sections of the tram have opened, with the last and final phase extending Line 1 to the airport opening earlier in March of this year. However, the most relevant thing to occur for Luxtram since 2017 has been due to government policy. You see, it was in March of 2020 that public transport in Luxembourg, including the tramway, was made free for all riders, thus making Luxembourg the first country in the world to have nationwide free public transport. These free tickets, coupled with the gradual completion of Line 1 since 2017, are one of the main reasons for the network's incredible rise in ridership. From 4.7 million passengers in the tram's first year of preparation to 31.7 million passengers in 2024, the tram has seen a steady increase in ridership since the introduction of free transit fares. Besides the rise in ridership, another positive outcome the network has seen in past years is the gradual acceptance by those who initially opposed the project of the tram's positive effects. What this has resulted in is the city-wide support for expansion plans that could see the network double in length within the next decade. Another part of Luxtram's success is the fact that operationally it is very well designed. Not only is it free, but trains run on 5-minute intervals, it interconnects different suburbs of the city with downtown, and it has excellent intermodality with buses as well as trains at Central Station and international travel at the recently opened airport station. Furthermore, the overall design is incredibly well thought out when it comes to efficiency. The tram runs on dedicated lanes, has priority over cars in all intersections, and designers even went as far as having batteries installed on the tram so that they could build catenary-free rail sections. This is all in the name of preventing power lines from being installed in the historic city center. It is thus undeniable that this level of efficiency and attention to detail by Luxtram and its designers has directly affected the satisfaction of riders and the overall success of the tram. Thus, if you are still wondering why a large percentage of the city uses the tram, the answer is simple. It is the cheapest and most convenient way to move around the city, all the whilst increasing mobility, reducing car emissions, and boosting economic opportunities. And all of this without having a negative visual impact on city streets by minimizing catenary use. In other words, Luxtram has found the formula for creating the perfect tram. Thus, despite its tricky past, Luxembourg now has one of the world's newest tramway networks. And its resounding success only begs one question: what's next? Well, if you are a rapid transit enthusiast, you will be glad to know that expansions to the network are at multiple stages of execution, with 3 new lines planned by 2035. The first expansion beyond the initial plan broke ground on the 16th of May of 2025. Named Kirchberg 2A, the first phase of this extension will see a 2.3-kilometer branch be built from Rudbreg Praffendal to the European School of Luxembourg. Set to open in 2027, this will be the first phase of the K2 extension, which should eventually rejoin Line 1 at Lux Expo in the future. Further expansions included in Luxembourg's 2035 National Mobility Plan will see the tramway branch out at Central Station in what is named the HO project. With the first 1.1 kilometer phase planned for commission in 2028, construction works on this extension have yet to start. Finally, works on a second tram depot at Cloche d'Or are to start later this year, whilst a 17.5 kilometer fast tram line with 100 km per hour sections will extend the network to Esch-sur-Alzette, Luxembourg's second largest city, by 2035. Besides construction, another thing that will be interesting to follow is whether or not other places can adopt Luxembourg's innovative public transit strategies. While some countries are testing the waters with reduced transit fares, there is one place that has already followed suit, and that is Malta, where in 2022 they followed Luxembourg's example by making public transport free for all residents. And although Malta's rapid transit isn't as developed as Luxembourg's, it will still be interesting to see whether it works and whether more countries dare to take a step forward towards more accessible public transportation.